Everything going cashless these days. E-payments like Pay Now, credit and debit cards are the norm. So without seeing physical notes being exchanged and just how much you have in your wallet, it can be hard to control how you spend your money or how your children spend it. The Straits Times had this follow-up report yesterday to a December forum letter sent in by Mr. Lim Cheng Mong. His 18-year-old daughter had spent around $20,000 on his credit card over 6 weeks and made through 89 transactions on mobile game Genshin Impact. How did she get access to Mr. Lim's credit card in the first place? Well, her Grab account was tied to it, and without her father's knowledge, she had linked her e-wallet to the game. Well, such stories are becoming more common as more youngsters are exposed to online transactions with a rise in digital payments. So how can parents teach their kids to be more financially responsible and smart with money? To answer this is Ferris Wee, a master trainer at the Institute for Financial Literacy. Welcome to the show, Ferris. So what's your advice for how parents can teach their kids about being smart with spending money, particularly in this cashless world when a child may not realize just how much they're spending?
Hi, Olivia. Thanks for inviting me. So as parents, we are naturally very worried for our children, right? And we want the best for them. So we would like them to learn as much as possible, in fact, as quick as possible. However, every child is different. So I would suggest that parents will start small by scaffolding the learning, building on their learning, starting with something simple and palatable to their children. So what do I mean, if I may elaborate, right? So for instance, before we even introduce cashless to the younger children, for instance, the preschoolers, they need to appreciate cash and the different denominations. I've learned recently that the preschool children could not fully grasp the understanding of coins. For example, 250 cents and 520 cents to make up $1. So parents perhaps can introduce money by letting the children to identify and share with them the value of different denominations, such as $1 coin, $2, $5, or $10 notes instead. So after that is done, once they are familiar with the dollar denominations, they can introduce coins for their understanding. So what is also helpful is role-playing, such as like a marketing activity, pretending to be a buyer or seller. So I have a 5-year-old who enjoys role-playing, but truth be told, right, my son still struggles with identifying cash. So I felt that it is even more difficult for him to appreciate cashless. So with that, once he's familiar, we can introduce him to the payment modes like the parents can do. So an example would be they can simulate a game at home for the children to practice using cash and digital payments, because they want to start with cash first, right? Like for example, they can create an imaginary canteen at home, give them a cash allowance, allow them to practice paying for their food or receiving change, have fun, get them to share what they have learned. So for digital payments, because now there's digital watch, right? You can even introduce a toy watch for their child, to practice digital payments. Explain to them that the money will be deposited in this watch, and have fun getting their children to pretend using the watch for payments. That's for preschoolers. So if I may add, so for those parents, we have elder children like the teens, right? First of all, I can't speak for teens because I don't have one. Having said that, the typical principles is the same applies for teens. We want to start small by introducing habits to help them manage their cash and their money in the digital world. So there's cash and there's cashless, right? So habits such as saving before spending, setting financial goals, budgeting, tracking their expenses will really help them to have a sense of where did most of their money go. When it comes to allowance, do they receive it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis? If they are unable to manage on a daily or weekly basis, if you are going to give them a monthly basis, then they're going to struggle, right? So they have to be able to manage daily, weekly, then eventually they can be equipped to manage monthly. So a follow-up practice would be to review their spending on a weekly and bi-weekly basis to see whether they are on track. So if they can do that, so they will develop consciousness. Having said that, I want to be very real. As I mentioned earlier, I do not have a teenager, and you and I, we were once a teen, right? And as typical teenagers, we tend to exert our way, our will, wanting to show that our independence. Therefore, it is also important for us to look at the soft factors, which is to connect with them before teaching them. One practical approach is to have intentional conversations with the children. using learning moments or opportunities from everyday articles, like the one that we just mentioned earlier, the report on Sunday, activities to initiate connection and conversations, right? Like what are the disadvantages and advantages of using cash, cashless, and how do we feel about the story that you just read, for instance? Yeah.
Well, very great tips there, Ferris. So
Thank you.
what are the common pitfalls that parents need to be aware of about their kids spending money?
Okay, when you ask this question, I think the first thing that really comes to my mind is instant gratification. So, so when they find difficulty, instant gratification means that they find it very difficult to resist temptation to spend now, to save, and they have a tendency to spend now rather than later. So there's a tendency to give in to wants such as snacking, designer drinks, using private hires for transport, or buying non-essential items like gaming upgrades, like we have saw in the papers, right? So habitual spending tends to add up. So that's one, instant gratification. It applies not just to children, I think for adults as well. The second that I could think of is credit or cashless gratification. So credit gratification refers to the habit of living on credit. This is especially tricky when the children accounts or when the kids accounts are linked with the parents' credit cards. So cashless gratification refers to using digital payments. Why do I say that? When the money is unseen, there's a tendency for us to spend more. You and I mean, if we have a tendency, we have a credit card, we would know. And the research also shows that there's a tendency for us to spend more when we don't feel the pain, right? Then the third one in Singapore language is called the action gratification. So what is action? Action is a word that we typically use in Singapore to describe someone showing off, So action gratification refers to this very popular quote that people like to use. It refers to buying things that we do not need, that they do not need, with the money that they do not have to impress the people that they do not like, they don't even know. So why do we say this? We see many examples on social media, whether they are adults or children or teenagers, right, showing off their purchases, right, comparing with each other. So that's the common pitfalls. So the idea is instead of practicing I, instant gratification, C, credit or cashless gratification, A, action gratification, we want to practice delayed gratification, which is declining a small reward today in order to bring a larger reward tomorrow. Tomorrow, I mean.
Ferris Wee there from the Institute for Financial Literacy. If you like our content and want more similar videos, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Also, turn on your notifications by hitting the bell icon on YouTube to make sure you don't miss any new videos from us.